Welcome to Great Gardens. It's the middle of winter and I'm thinking about spring. I don't know about you. Today we're going to talk to Melissa and Neil about starting your seeds indoors. That's one of the first signs of spring. And we're going to learn all about how to do that successfully. So come along and let's talk to them. Hello Neil, Melissa, how are you guys today?
How you doing?
How you doing, Peter?
We're here with Melissa and Neil from Weston Nurseries, and we're going to talk today about seed starting. And we're standing in front of a whole bunch of seed packets. This kind of excites me. I think of spring now, and I'm getting excited. There's 2 feet of snow on the ground, maybe 3. And a lot of people will start thinking about starting seeds indoors, but there's a lot of people who don't do that. And there's a lot of economical advantages, I would imagine, of starting your seeds indoors.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's exciting and it's also cost effective to start your seeds. You just need to make sure that you don't start your seeds too early. A lot of people get excited right now and just seed everything at once.
Right.
And you really need to select what needs to be started now, what needs to be started in 2 weeks. Do your research.
We're in mid-February right now.
Right.
And when is in Massachusetts probably a good time to start some of the earlier?
Well, Neil's got it down.
I think you really have to sit down and do a planning session and draw it out and see how big your garden is going to be, or if you're going to expand your garden and so forth. I think from there, I think you would definitely want to start your things that take longer, and which would be peppers and tomatoes. I think peppers could start middle of February till the 1st of March.
And parsley. Parsley takes a long time.
But those are the first things you'd want to start off with, would be just to get those started, and trays and stuff like that before anything else is started.
Okay, so peppers. Do we have some peppers here?
We have some right over here. There's some peppers right there.
Okay. So this is this isn't really
That's actually
consumer.
this is something that we have bought in as Weston Nurseries is growing, so we bought this on a commercial level.
Okay.
The cool thing about buying seeds at the store and not online is that all the information is on the packet, and it will tell you days to maturity, it will tell you days to germinate, which is really key. You've got bush beans here, 8 days to germinate. You obviously don't want to start those quite yet. We've started some because we're doing a project for the flower show, but otherwise you wouldn't be starting beans until
Beans
the last second.
would be sowed, probably the earliest would be the middle of April.
Okay.
That's if weather permits.
Neil, you're an avid home gardener. I've been to your place before. A huge vegetable garden. What are the crops you grow out there?
I grow peppers, tomatoes, cucumbers, all different kinds of squashes, lettuce, onions, pretty much everything, pumpkins, pretty much everything you see on the table here.
And are you starting everything from seed yourself?
Yep.
Everything from seed.
Everything from seed.
Huge cost savings when you do that in terms of buying over the finished
Oh,
plant.
definitely.
Especially
yeah.
with peppers and tomatoes, yeah, you really get your money's worth.
Definitely, and as long as you just have it, I think a planning process would be the most important. Like, you can't throw all your seeds all at one.
Right, we're going to talk about the planning obviously being very important, but then how you do it so your germination rate is successful. And we'll show that in a minute here. But one thing, all seeds do have an expiration date on the back of them. And in your opinion, I don't know who wants to answer this question, what do you experience in terms of if it says sell by last year, do you still want to use those? Does it depend on the crop? Will they germinate?
I'm going to just speak up for 1 minute, because I think you definitely can use them the next year unless that package did not germinate for you the previous year. In other words, if you had bad luck, then don't use it. Because
Okay.
sometimes you have a brand new packet of seeds, and your germination rate is not as good as expected.
Okay. So if it doesn't work when you're supposed to use it,
That's right.
or if it does work when you're supposed to use
that's
it,
right.
try it again the next year.
Try it
you're
again the
saying.
next year, and we were talking that it's probably good for 4 or 5 years.
Okay. So that's good to know too, that you don't have to throw out your old seeds.
Exactly.
And you should still experience almost as good of the
Yeah.
germination
Yeah.
rate with most vegetables. Okay, great.
Again, you're not spending, it's not too much of a waste of money if they don't germinate, though. That's the cool thing about starting seeds. It's $1.79. If they don't germinate, it's a bummer, but
Right.
you have them, really
You do a
flown
few
it.
extra, and if you don't have a
you
few,
try
you'll have
again.
enough.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's great to see all these seeds. Like I say, I get all excited at the beginning of the year when I see these kind of things come up in the garden center. And you know, I'm one of the ones who, I don't start my seeds, so I'm anxious to learn more. Let's go over and take a look and show our viewers how we actually successfully start seeds. Let's come over this way. Okay, here we are with a nice workbench. Perfect place to start some seeds, and you can do this. I suppose people could do this in their garages and their basements starting in mid-February.
Yeah.
And Neil, we're going to ask you just to guide us through the process. I guess it all starts with the soil.
The soil mixes are very important. You could do it different ways about it. You could buy bags like this all together for people who first start out. That's probably the easiest solution is to buy a bag that's
Pre-mixed.
Pre-mixed. It's already done. You don't have to mix anything up. You put it in trays that you can purchase at any nursery or Lowe's or Home Depot.
Do you have your own secret soil ingredient mix?
I can't tell anybody that's
Yeah, I didn't think so.
mix.
I didn't
Yeah.
think
He
so.
doesn't give us a
So over time, you develop.
Yes.
You develop a sense of
Yeah,
what
for
soil
instance,
works best.
what we did here, we did these this morning. We buy one of these things here to get started. What I do is I put like 4 or 5 different ingredients of different mixes we have on the floor. Potting mixes, I'd like to use different ones because one doesn't have what the other one has.
Do you change it for the type of vegetable that you're producing?
Not,
peppers,
not
tomatoes,
really.
different or the same?
Not when I start things. It's pretty much as long as you have a good mix and a good ingredient. I always will add a couple handfuls in a mix like this. I will put a couple handfuls of cow manure in there. Just to give it a little kick.
A little organic or a little
Right,
nitrogen.
Just a little nitrogen in there.
But mostly I can see the little perlite pieces in there.
Yeah, perlite. There's vermiculite
Vermiculite.
and stuff like that. That's in there.
Heavily
And-
peat and bark
Right.
based.
I mean, I wouldn't stick with just a Miracle Grow. Miracle Grow has a little more wood. That it's okay, but you don't want too much of it. There's
You want a lot of
sticks.
fines because the seed needs
That's
contact
right.
on the
That's
surface.
right. You want it fluffy, and you don't want to. When you do these trays, you just do it naturally. You just basically do it with your hand.
Okay.
After the fill-up, you don't squeeze them down. Everything has a lot of air in it right now. All these trays, and what we do after we fill them up, after the mix is done. Before I forget, we have to add water to this because you don't want to do a mix that's dry and then put dry mix into the trays.
It's hard to get it
It's
wet,
hard to
actually.
get it wet. So you always make sure that soil is damp enough that
You can squeeze it into a
squeeze
ball.
into a ball, and you can even do a little more than that if you want.
Okay.
Because once these are wet, which we have here already, that's going to be probably good almost for like 4 or 5 days without watering it.
They stay wet when they
stay
start
wet.
out.
Yeah, they stay wet during that time.
Okay.
So basically, I just take a pencil, very easy. You read the instructions on the seed package, which is like tomatoes or peppers are pretty much the same. It's a 1/4 of an inch. I just use a pencil, half of that pencil. I just make a small little indentation like that. Don't go too deep. Okay, then from there, make sure you have identification tags. Very important. When you do all these and all of a sudden you forget which one is what, then you're in big trouble.
So you've got it
Okay.
right here. These are
Yeah, so
jalapenos.
what I like to do, I like to put the tag right away so you'll know that you're not going to, be confused. So basically, you just drop them in like this, one at a time, right in the middle. When we do I'm not going to do all these right now on camera here, but that's basically what we do.
Okay.
And what I also will do, I won't cover them yet because I know which seeds are where. I'll always put a couple in the corners, always.
A couple
in
extras.
case
Yeah.
you don't have germination.
Yeah,
or,
absolutely. You'll always take a couple because you think everyone's going to come up. They're not going to come up. And the corners are very easy. With that tool you have right there, you can easily get at it when it comes up. So you put a couple in the corners. So pretty much after that's all done, you basically just lightly cover them, and then that's it. But you have to put these in a warm area. You can't down cellar sometimes unless you have a wood stove or.
So you don't even water it. You just cover them up for the first, you said
Yes,
4 or 5 days,
4 or
and then you
5
get on the
days.
water?
Yeah, because the soil's already wet, and you don't want to overwater it.
Okay.
And once it's wet, it's going to stay wet till like 4 or 5 days.
Okay, again, it's mid-February, it might be the beginning of March, you're starting your seeds. Where do you then put this tray? What kind of light exposure does it need?
There's different ways of doing it. You could have like a window box. You could have like a bay window. You could heat source that's next to it. You could use blankets, those heated blankets underneath it, like a table. You could
How
do
many
that
hours of
also.
light does it need, preferably, to start?
Oh, as far as germinating, you don't need really any light. You just need the heat. You
Just
don't-
the heat
You don't
mostly,
need
not
any
the
light
light.
at all when they
That comes
germinate.
into play
Right,
later on.
right.
It's heat.
It's just the heat, and make sure that that soil stays warm.
Okay.
And the warmer it is, as long as it's not too warm, because when it's too warm, I'll show you later that the seeds come up very fast and they get spindly.
They get weak.
They
Yeah.
get weak.
Yeah. So it could even be in the dark. It just has to be warm.
Just has to be warm.
Okay. And then typically, how many days till you start to see?
Well, as soon as I see it start to come up to a point, we'll move them right to a window or have a greenhouse like this, but we don't.
Mhm.
Most places don't. Homeowners have like a small window, or maybe the best solution would be a sunroom. Would be great.
A sunroom, and you can buy these grow lights.
The grow lights,
That's got a few
setups,
trays on
yes, yep, and they have those little huts with plastic you can purchase also,
Right.
And that keeps it warm inside, and pretty much a 3-season.
So
porch.
$100, $200, maybe you can get something that actually goes in your house for seed starting with
Yep.
the lights, ample heat. And really, all you need are a few trays for most average-sized vegetable gardens. You don't need a lot of room.
No,
Not your
no.
vegetable garden, but the average one.
Well, I need a lot of room.
Yeah, you need a lot of room,
Well,
right?
yeah, Neil was making the point that when you grow, say, tomatoes, you've got a full tray here. You think about how much space that ends up being in July. It's a lot of space.
You really have to plan your garden, because like one tray like this, 18 tomato plants, say, or 18 pepper plants. That'll take over a 10 by 10 area of
In your
garden.
garden, right.
So
the
you
planning
really
up
have to
front.
plan, and like I said, when you open a package of seeds, you don't have to use all these seeds. Use enough for maybe one tray if you're going to do it yourself. That's a lot, believe me. You have to have a big garden if you're going to do that. Tomatoes, and then you go back to other things like onions or whatever else you're going to put in
You
your
can
garden.
start just about anything from seed, right?
Everything you can be started from seeds.
The whole salad,
Yep.
radishes,
Everything.
carrots, and you get into beans, broccoli, whatever you want.
And a lot of stuff can be put in pots. Like we were very successful with growing onions from pots and lettuce from pots.
Right, right.
You get them on a table up off the ground.
So, Melissa, talk to us about watering. Let's say this was in the pot for 4 or 5 days. How do you go about doing the watering?
I think it's most important to watch your watering before they've come up, actually, because and the way that I see it is a little bit different than Neil. I do these rows.
Let's talk about that. You do this
Okay.
because you're mass producing.
I'm
Not for your own
producing
garden,
a
but
little
for
bit
the-
more. Yeah, I'm
for
doing
the
it
garden
for here
center.
for Weston Nursery. So
Right.
it's easier for me to do these rows. I do about 20 per row seeds right next to each other, and then I don't have to water as much. They're compact. They're in there. And once they develop a root system, that's when I pull them up, pull them apart. They're nice and healthy, and I want to make sure that it is that way before I transplant. So the watering at that point isn't really an issue. When the seeds first go in, though, if I were to come up with a hose and just water, or even if I were at home and it was underneath the sink, it would be really easy to blow those seeds right out of their little cells. And so it's important to make sure that you just mist or buy the proper watering container, and because see
That's a gentle
little
effect.
splash, yeah. That
And
or
even
even
more gentle is the
more
spray.
gentle on the seed starting. I would do this,
Right.
Neil. So
Yeah.
I won't smother your new little seeds, but it's really really important. I think it's very frustrating when you have that happen, when you have them blow out. So
Okay.
you go to the trouble of doing all this. Make sure that you that you're watering correctly.
So these are the emerging seeds. This could be 4 or 5 weeks down the road. We're looking at here.
Yep.
Depending on the crop.
Depending on the seed. Yeah, these sweet peas and peas in general shoot up right away.
And then what do you do to thin them out and transplant them? You put them into probably a 3 or 4 inch pot.
Exactly, that's what I do. Yep, and it's
Now,
really,
would the homeowner do that as well, or at this time should it be ready to? Actually, they don't grow in here; they're starting from here, so they'll see it come this
if
big
they wanted
in
to
here.
do it this way, they could. I know people who are fanatical about peas, say, or sweet peas. They do a fair amount. You could easily do a tray like this and do all sweet peas and
Yeah.
put them out early because they're a cold crop. It's exciting to start them early if you have the space or enough window, enough sun. You can do it that way.
So, talk to me about, and Neil, you and I talked about this earlier. When you do the transplant, you've got to be careful. It can get thin on the stem. What's that called?
Dampening off basically is what that's called. I'm going to show you a prime example.
Let's move this out of the way.
I have a wood stove down in my house, and basically if it's too hot, seeds come up very fast. And to a point when your plants get like this, you really have to do something quick, because that's just they're gonna die on you, pretty much. This is a prime example right here, dampening off right here. This is what happens. The lower part of the stem
Oh yeah.
rots out. And what
Is
happens...
that no good right now? Because I
yeah,
can see it's thin.
yeah, this is no good right now. But if I leave these just like they are, that's going to happen to pretty much all of those.
Okay.
Okay, so what I would do, I would take them right out, and I would transplant them right away. You can take this right here. You can take anything. You just pull that thing out. It might break up on you, which is all right. You know, you take one plant like that, right out like that, and then you transplant it in one of those trays right here, and you bury that stem.
Really bury it.
Bury the stem. Just have the leaves show.
So this is interesting. I know when we talk about woody plants or perennials, we don't want to plant those too deep.
No, but these guys can take it. The peppers and the tomatoes.
Peppers, tomatoes are the ones that you can do this with.
I think right up to the leaf.
Right up to the
leaflets.
leaves. You try not to cover the leaves. You don't want the leaves sitting in the dirt or the wet soil.
Right.
As you can, but very very much like that. If you do all those, pull those right out. These are pretty tough plants. They're not really. They can fall over on you.
Now these are tomatoes.
Really-
Would you be able to do that type of transplanting with burying it deep with any type of vegetable, or is it just certain vegetables?
Just peppers and tomatoes. You'd want to bury them.
Because they have the dampening off effect
That's
more
right.
than other things.
That's right.
Okay.
But squashes, they're so fast and stuff like that. Cucumbers, they'll come up so fast, and those are great for a different setup.
Yeah, but
different
if you
pots.
did that with, say, a basil plant, it would not make it. It wouldn't want to be buried like that.
Right.
It's really
Well, that's
just
right. It's only
just
tomatoes
They
and
really
peppers.
just tomatoes and peppers. Is really
I've seen broccoli get that way though too. Is there more like broccoli? You might want to bury it a little deep, or am I not doing it right?
You're probably not doing it
I
right.
think you might not be doing it.
Okay, figures. The best part about being the host on the show is learning. I guess you can talk to me more after. So you mentioned another way is called mounding.
Mounding. Yeah, we have another tray. Basically, when you fill these trays up, you could go a third less.
Okay.
Right? Put one in the middle like I did here, and when they come up, you basically add the soil. When it comes up to a
So
point,
instead of transplanting, just
instead
mound
of
up more
transplanting
soil.
it, you pull the soil right up around each plant quickly, and then that'll prevent it you from having to go through all transplanting.
Okay. And then it grows more, and then you get to having to harden things off before you bring it outside. Correct?
That's correct. Plants, to a point, you really don't want to bathe them too much. You want to protect them, you want to take care of them, but then when it comes to when they get to a point where like this size right here,
Mm-hmm.
you would like to probably bring them outside for a couple hours, like.
So you're into March now. It's starting to get into April.
Yeah,
even.
you'd say if it's 40. These are very strong plants. They can withstand cold weather, so you can bring those outside for a couple, 2 or 3 hours.
Now you don't want it to get maybe not in the coldest night during that time of year.
Right.
It could get too cold
No,
still.
I wouldn't leave them outside. I'm saying bring them outside for a couple hours. Bring them in, and
Okay.
and then prolong that.
You're just getting them used to
You
the
get-
cold.
you
Getting
get-
them
So a
used
little
to
bit of work
different
there, a little bit of
environment.
labor
You
back and
basically
forth
have to toughen them up. Is what it really.
before you permanently put them out.
Before you put them out. Because right now, if you just take those outside right now and put them outside, they're probably not going to do very well.
Right, right. Okay, great. So that covers most of what you have to do to get it up to that size. Let's go look at some more finished vegetables that are actually look like what you'd purchase from a garden center and
Yeah.
bring into your garden to see what a successful crop looks like. Let's go
All right.
this way. All right, here's the finished product. Looks like you got a pepper, and Melissa, you got a tomato and a squash. We talked a lot about the seed starting with the peppers and the tomato, and this is approximately about an 8-week-old seed now.
8, 9 weeks. Yep.
8 to 9 weeks,
Yeah.
okay. And I see it's in one of these compostable pots, which is great. You can rip this off.
You take the plastic off. You can put this directly in the ground.
Okay, now when you do plant it, tell us about how you would plant that in your garden.
Peppers and tomatoes, you can't hesitate at all. When you put these in the ground, you can go at least up to that bottom leaf, right there, or even higher. You can actually bury those.
So you want to kind of straight, it tends to lean.
Yeah,
kind of
but that's you're gonna have more roots come out of this lower area right here. So it's just gonna be root
It
Roots
strengthens.
come in, your strengthens the plant, and pretty much that's going to spring back up.
Okay, good. And the tomato Melissa's holding here, that
Yeah.
looks much more rigid. That's just the way it grows, but you still want to plant that a little deep. correct?
Yeah. But this guy actually, I have a few varieties here that are built to go into those hanging upside down.
Oh yeah, topsy-turvy.
The topsy-turvies, they've produced a tomato that's more bulky and bushy. It would also be fine for a smaller, for like a deck or something. So that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
this is as beefy as it looks. It's not as stringy as you might get if you were seeding a tomato at home.
Right.
Okay,
As leggy. So
Okay.
this is kind of ready to go in the ground
right,
now.
right.
But the same rule applies if it were a longer, skinnier one. You could go further down, right, Neil?
Definitely.
Right. So you've grown this, talk economics for a second. You've grown this for pennies. And if you were to purchase this from your local garden center, it's it's more like $4, right?
$4 or $5,
$4,
yeah.
So you can see the cost savings right here. When you see that plant, it probably cost you under $1 when you did it yourself. A lot of work, the hardening
Well, as long
off
as
we
you don't
talked about, and
figure
all
out
that.
labor, but yes, definitely.
Yeah,
But where you
labor.
really
Money.
save money, though, is in the when you think about buying tomatoes. You go to the store and how much they are a pound now.
That's right.
You're going to get a lot of tomatoes out of
Right,
one
it's the
plant.
harvest.
It's the harvest that you're
And
making.
the
Right.
enjoyment.
And this is, if you grew in your trays that's down here, would be what things would look like if you did everything great. Maybe in your second year after you made your mistakes,
Second,
right?
third year, yeah,
Yeah,
realistically.
that's good. Though. It's a lot of fun
It is fun.
to be able to grow your own plants like that. You're holding something in your arm we should talk about.
Oh yeah, I didn't want to forget that how important it is to go from this
Oops.
to your garden.
Right.
You really should take notes. I always tell myself I'm going to take notes. It doesn't matter if it's in a gardens organizer or in a plain old little notebook. You really should take notes.
You want to know
When-
what you
wanna know what
planted,
you
the
did last
name
year,
of the variety,
the name of it,
if
and
worked.
what was successful, what wasn't, and you think you're going to remember, but you don't. You really should write it down.
Right.
It's
So
really nice
journal.
to be able to refer back to what you did
Right.
wrong and what you did right.
And not only that, but labeling the row within the garden.
Exactly. Label, and write everything down.
And just to show the viewers, we do have a lot of other plants. It's really exciting. I mean, you can do just anything from seed. Here's
Got some dill,
some dill and looks like some basil, so
Yeah.
all your herbs.
some chunky oregano over here.
That's chunky, all right.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. I'm getting ready and excited. I just wish the snow would go away for spring. And thanks for teaching me and the viewers so much. We're gonna go see Ann Well in the Did You Know segment, and she's gonna surprise us with a few topics today. Let's go see Ann.
Hi, I know that you just heard about starting seeds indoors, and that gives that whole illusion that the only thing to think about during this time of year is the activities that you can do in terms of gardening that are indoors. But there are a couple of things that you should be on the lookout outdoors. One of those is hemlock woolly adelgid. Just like the name says, it affects hemlocks. It is woolly. Adelgid means that it's a sucking insect, and it is active, unlike most insects, actually during the coldest weather of the year. Actively feeding from mid-October till about mid-July. This is when it does the most damage. The adults are actually going to be laying brand new egg clusters starting in March, and those are incredibly distinctive. So what you want to look for, I have a little sketch here. I do really disastrous sketches for customers, but they get a kick out of them. What you want to look for is on the underside of a hemlock branch, right at the base of the needles, each needle along the twig, are little cottony balls, and they line up either side of the stem, right down it. They're about 1/8 of an inch, and they look like little balls of cotton. Very distinctive. You cannot miss it. Look for it in March. So this kind of damage, this feeding damage where they suck the sap out of the tree, can actually kill a hemlock if you're not careful about it. But the good news is that it's very well controlled with fairly simple steps. If you want to go the most benign route, you're going to be looking at using horticultural oil. Horticultural oils come in various forms, various weights, and they work essentially by smothering. Very effective for HWA because it can smother the overwintering eggs, the nymphs, and the adults. Great product. So you're talking about doing it in time with the life cycle. That means that late winter, early spring, so you're talking late March, beginning of April, you're going to target those brand new egg masses with a dormant oil. That's the heavier weight oil. and you get good coverage over the tree, and it will smother all of those eggs, knock down the population tremendously. This insect goes essentially dormant from during the hot weather months of the year, so mid-July until mid-October, and it's at the end of the summer that you actually follow up with another treatment. This time you'd be using an all-seasons oil, lighter weight. Same idea, it smothers, but now you're hitting adults, active nymphs, any eggs that may be left, so you're trying to do another second big knockdown. On a heavily infested tree, you may find that sometimes they treat with a pyrethroid mixed in with that, which is a basic, not terribly horrible insecticide and a very effective one. Key to control of HWA is to be thorough in the spray. If you've got a big hemlock that's involved, then you really need to get a professional in to help you do the spraying so that you can get good coverage. They can also inject imidacloprid, or you can do a drench. This is another whole route going through with an insecticide, sediment oil. Maybe not as effective for a heavily infested and tree that's been involved for a long time, but that's also a possibility. And if you want to go the soil injection route, you do need a professional to do, a tree injection route, you do need a professional to handle that for you. So be on the lookout for those little cottony masses, rows, right down the underside of the stems. Make sure that you're thorough in whatever approach you use, follow package directions always, and get a professional if you've got a really big tree so that you be safe and so that you get a better outcome. More information, go to umassgreeninfo.org. Thanks.
Thank you for watching the show. That was great advice, Ann, on the Willia delge. It's such an important insect to know about here in New England with the hemlocks being such a prevalent plant. And I want to thank Melissa and Neil on seed starting. I certainly learned a lot, and I think I can be more successful, and I'm going to go home and give it a shot myself. So if you have any questions, please send us an email or contact our website, and we'll see you again next time.